Welcome to this video. We will be talking about thirds today, so chromatic thirds, double thirds, major thirds, anything that has to do with thirds, and I mean a set of thirds that goes like twice, for example, double thirds in a classic sense, like this. So not just individual thirds, but always together with more thirds, basically. You might be able to hear that I still have a bit of a cold and I'm not in my best shape, but I think it's sometimes good to show and think about things even in not your best shape, especially also pianistically, since I didn't practice much these days, to really think about what it is that we do at the piano and how we can improve them. So we will talk about thirds, how to improve them, what the feeling should be in the hand when playing them, and so on. So you might be familiar with thirds from different pieces, for example in Chopin, right, like this, or you have the thirds etude, or you have different pieces that have in the left hand, for example in Liszt, sometimes you have thirds in the left hand. So what is it actually about? Let's look at how it should feel like, or how it feels to play thirds, and maybe we start by looking at why it's so difficult. So thirds are about playing set of thirds, so you not only play them once. This wouldn't be really like double thirds that we look at today. So I'm talking about thirds plus thirds. They can be major, minor, anything you like. Actually, this advice or this analysis today, it also goes to other intervals. For example, if you were playing sixth, for example, or fourth, this advice would also work. So why is it so difficult to play them? Well, it's because we are playing two notes. For example, very typically in the Chopin etude, right? 25-6. We're playing two notes here that are not connected in the sense that they are not 1-2 and then 3-4. For example, it would be like this, or if we make it prettier, the difference here is that in this kind of situation we have a symmetry down the middle. If you imagine a line here, then actually we are actioning here and then the other half, right? So the symmetry would be actually between 2 and 3. If you want it more symmetrical, of course, you can do 1-2 and then 4-5. So this would be symmetrical because we have this part of the hand separated by the middle of our hand, and then here we do 4 and 5. So this is easy to do. And why is it easy to do? We need to understand this before we look at thirds. It's because we can use the rotation, right? The pronation, supination is something that we use a lot in just our daily environment, I guess, right? If you're turning something or you're turning a doorknob and similar, you're already used to rotating your wrist like this, right? So this becomes easier for most people to do because it's similar to a tremolo. If you think about a classic tremolo, for example, let's do the left hand here. What we're doing is we are almost doing a full rotation, if you think about it, but we're cutting it short. So the full rotation would look like this, right? But we are saying, oh, we only need this much and then go back, and then this much and then go back. So the movement is the same, but we use like 5% of it. So this is a tremolo. Essentially, using 1, 2, and 4, 5 in not a third way, not with thirds, is like playing a tremolo. The difference here is that we play two notes instead of one, like we did in the left hand. This would be a single note tremolo, right? But this is like two notes. And this is where it gets a bit more complicated than a simple tremolo. Because we're playing two notes, those two notes need to happen at the same time. For someone who has played the piano a lot, you can try this also. It will be very easy to do this because you're used to playing two notes at the same time with chords like three notes plus, right? And they all need to happen together. So playing just two isn't particularly difficult. For example, if I take even something that's not symmetrical, let's do 1, 2, and 3, 4. I can still use the tremolo type, right? Even though this is more awkward, this is still more similar to a tremolo because I can still kind of get in there and pivot around between my second and third finger. There's a line that can pivot from. And the reason why the thirds, chromatic thirds, are more difficult is because this concept doesn't work. Because we have one finger here and then the other one finger there. So it's not split, you see? The problem is it's not split into this position. It's for example 1, 3 and then 2, 5. So it's a little bit awkward because we can't use 1, 2 and then 3, 5. There's no rotation or tremolo feeling going on, but it's 1, 3 and 2, 5. And this is a completely different feeling. So the 1, 3, 2, 5 is certainly a new sensation for the hand, but it's not something that's impossible to get used to. In fact, you only need a bit of practice and consistency with it, which I will show you now, to understand the feeling of it. The first thing you should understand is that these two fingers are together. You should think of them as if this was your second finger. Yeah? So you just really fixate these two being together. For example, if you're doing the thirds etude, yeah? I will switch the keys now to something else, otherwise we just play Chopin the whole time. So let's do this, yeah? Let's do it major, yeah? So you fixate on 1 and 3 being together, and this feeling will take some time to get used to. So I would say repeat it a lot and keep the other fingers on the next position. So like this, you just go 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, not playing the second one. And you want to understand that those two notes, even though they are not split or not pivoted anywhere, those are together. So this feeling takes a bit of time to get used to. What I would also recommend is that not only you press with the fingers, right, but you also slightly depress the hand a little bit. Yeah. What does this do? It uses a little bit of the pivoting because, of course, the third finger, you can still pivot if you find the right way to do it like a tremolo, right? With 1, 3 and 2, 5. But there comes a point you will notice where you can't switch the direction fast enough. So it's best that you just use 1, 3 and use a bit of almost bouncing up and down motion. This is just to get the feeling down. 1, 3, 2, 5. So if you look what I'm doing now with my hand, you can see best from the side, is I'm using a bit of forearm here. So what I'm doing is I'm 1, 3, and then 2, 5, and 1, 3, 2, 5, 1, 3, 2, 5. And I'm changing the wrist higher and down on each one. Because while you cannot really do this with chromatic double thirds, you can still do this to get the notes and the movement smoother. This will also create something like a natural accent, by the way, if you do it. So this is just for practice, And eventually you will be able to do it without any movement and a bit more stable. Because, as I said, this creates an accent. You need to understand 1 and 3 are together, even though they are not like this, yeah, they are together. These two are together, nothing can break that bond, okay? You should think about this. And then the other set of fingers, whatever that is, 2, 4, 2, 5, that is also together, cannot be separated. Okay, once you have this down, you need to very slowly play. And repeat it many times. I'm talking probably hours, right? I mean, who cares? Your neighbors might care, but you shouldn't, yeah? So just slowly doing this movement. And just understanding what you're doing, right? You're doing 2 notes at the same time, which are not at the same location. You need to play and understand. Your brain will adapt to this. When we practice anything, to be honest, yeah, it doesn't have to be thirds. When you practice a passage, your finger is completely, and your brain is aware of what you need to do, but it just needs to automate this process. Same for here. So you do this for a while. Of course, there are exercises, yeah. The first very obvious, let's switch hands. The first very obvious exercise is that you should do 1 voice staccato and the other 1 legato. And then the other way around. When you play with the hand straight like this, you might have issues with 1 or 2 things when playing thirds. That is because you're in such a cramped position like this that the hand is more natural and has more space once you go sideways with the wrist and you have this deviation here. This allows the hand to have a more comfortable position rather than this. Also allows certain fingers to be extended. So here a bit cramped, as you can see, and not a lot of space. For example, my 5th finger would be almost impossible to play here because the 4th finger is just taking this. I mean, I would have to go with the 4th finger over the 5th finger, which makes no sense. So by doing this, all of a sudden the 5th finger is in a great spot here. It's playing a bit sideways, but this is no issue. You see? Now I have more space to play the thirds. You should do absolutely just the minimum of volume that is required. I don't really see thirds being written in fortissimo. Rarely or never seen them being like triple forte, you need to play thirds, right? Normally you just have to play them a bit soft. And this is also good news because you only need to do the amount of effort until the sound comes. You don't need to go like triple forte or fortissimo for thirds often. You actually should start, and I recommend this often, from the minimum volume that you need in order for them to be played. And you actually start with barely pressing the notes down and then adding a little bit more weight each time. And then you probably have it. Yeah, that's probably the volume you need to play the thirds. You can add a little bit more for safety. So what I'm doing here is slightly pressing down, and this way, you know, the weight is added. And you will find a spot where it's just enough. Another way to practice the thirds is to practice them staccato. And this might seem counterintuitive, especially if you want legato thirds. Let's say you need to play them legato. But practice them both staccato. It reactivates a interesting feature, which is that you start to use a bit the forearm, right, to bounce. And using this forearm bounce a little bit, even when playing legato, is actually quite beneficial. I mean, I know I use this forearm bounce even when I'm playing things very legato and that are in double notes. But using this a little bit, yeah, is quite beneficial for playing thirds. So you can use it and practice staccato to activate the feeling again, you know. And then you go like, you still use the movement, but you basically stick to the keys now. You see, this is like legato thirds, but by using the movement, I'm suddenly building up a lot more speed. So I think this is also a trick to make the thirds faster. Fingering is very important with thirds. I don't know why, but some people think it's cheating when you do, for example, let's say you have this, right? But some people think it's completely cheating. 2, 3, 1, 5. For me, honestly, feels the same amount of comfort, maybe a bit more than 1, 3, 2, 4, right? But you should not be scared to use a fingering like this. I mean, people who disagree with this really have nothing else to do, I think. Because why should you not use a fingering that feels superior to you? Fingering is like a pair of shoes, right? And the argument that you don't learn anything new if you use this fingering is completely invalid, in my opinion, because you can practice thirds as just thirds in any position with any finger you want, but in the end, in the piece, you should use the one that works best for you. I mean, what sense does it make to choose a fingering in the performance that works worst for you? That makes zero sense, and you will not get a medal for choosing one fingering because someone told you to do it. Yeah. So I recommend learning and practicing all fingerings, even the spicier ones. Yeah. I don't even know. Like, depends on the position and interval, of course. But even like 1, 4 to 5, being able to do it, you know. Just pick any third interval you like. Both hands, by the way. Don't forget about the left hand, even though it never has any thirds. It does have thirds sometimes. But you should not neglect the left hand. But please, in the end, in your performance, in your piece, use the finger that works best for you. If that's 2, 3 or 2, 4, or one that goes over like this, yeah, with the second and first finger, which is a different feeling, just a different feeling. It feels more like this. Some people, they like it a lot, it works great for them. Okay, then please use it. Some people do not like it and feel like, oh, that's very awkward for my hand. Then don't use it. But practice both hands, all possible intervals and locations and fingerings. Yeah, so that's probably the best exercise there is. When you have more thirds going up or down, there will be the opportunity to slide. Right, for example. I'm always pro slide. I'm team pro slide, yeah? So if you do not like to slide, you will have to bounce with the thumb eventually, yeah? Because you know, mathematically it doesn't work. Either you slide somewhere or you need to thumb bounce. Of course, you know, I learned both the jumping one and the sliding one, and as always, you should know both. But I think whenever you can slide and doing so properly, it saves a lot of time, right? A tip for sliding, I would say, is that on the note you need to slide from, you should lift the finger a bit higher before you slide, so that you can do it in one smooth movement. If you do not have enough momentum, the slide might fail. So you need a bit of momentum before, especially, you should exaggerate when you practice, and then later you should not use that much momentum, but a little bit helps to make the transition to the next note. Okay, this piano here has plastic keys, but don't worry, I've played on plenty of pianos that have wooden keys, like some Steinways, of course, or Bösendorfers that have the fully wood black keys, which is, of course, extremely common, especially on concert grands. So is it any different there? A little bit, I would say, because they tend to be a bit more rough, but I mean, having played on them, I can tell you that it's also not a big of a problem as long as you don't try to find, the resistance in the black key before you slide. Just spend a brief amount of time on the black key and then continue to slide, right? It might be easiest on plastic keys, but the difference to wooden keys is a little bit, yeah, I agree. But if you play on the edge of that black key and don't, not starting here and then trying to slide down the whole key and get every splinter you can, so just on the edge and then continuing, it's absolutely fine. So I will now do a summary so now I will do a conclusion of what I think is important. First, understand why thirds are different in terms of movement compared to tremolos, for example. Understand that there's a pivot point, but eventually at faster speed, this pivot point becomes a bit unusable. So the approach you need to go, in my opinion, is understanding the connection of both keys, both fingers, which will take some time. You need to really repeat this for a long time until you understand that those two fingers are connected. In my opinion, that's the best way about it. Then you should practice one voice staccato, one legato, and the other way around. You should also practice both staccato and get a little bit of forearm action, because using this forearm action, even in a legato, will improve the speed of it. You should practice all thirds in different intervals on different sides of the piano, and whenever you do, you should use different fingerings too. So use, for example, 1-4-2-5, 1-3-2-4, 1-3-2-5 when you have to perform a piece that includes thirds. Use the finger that works best for you. Do not listen to someone who tells you you can only use this or that fingering, because practicing fingerings has nothing to do with what you're going to choose in your performance. In the performance, you need to choose the one that works best for you. Whatever fingering that is, do not feel like it's superior or inferior to other fingerings, because fingerings are like pairs of shoes. Also recommended slide whenever you can, because it's a very efficient and also, if done correctly, super safe method. It actually, for me, is better than jumping, but this is again personal preference. You need to be aware that on a concert grand which uses wooden keys, this is slightly more difficult to do because of the wooden texture. However, if you know where to hit the key, then it becomes virtually the same and is not more difficult. And lastly, remember that thirds are just one technical element, and usually they're performed to show a certain virtuoso element. They're not really, or at least if the piece isn't specifically written about thirds, they are not the main topic of conversation. So play them and elegantly, or brisk and with the certain charm, okay, not too technically and not too mechanically, because that's usually the least that people are interested in, to hear mechanical thirds. So you need to make them either with a nice crescendo or decrescendo or some sort of phrasing, because we usually only play thirds the same volume all over when we're doing exercises. Great, that's it. So go ahead, try some thirds, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one where I cover a different topic.